The first snow of December was falling when I finally said the words I'd been holding back for 5 years. Perfect, I told my daughter-in-law, Tiffany, when she announced that 25 members of her family would be spending Christmas at my house. I'm going on vacation. You can all do the cooking and cleaning. I'm not your maid. Her smile froze. For the first time since she married my son, she didn't have a clever answer ready. She had no idea that those few words were only the beginning of her holiday nightmare. My name is Margaret. I'm 66 years old, a widow, and for the past 5 years, I've been treated like hired help in my own home. When Kevin married Tiffany, I tried to welcome her. I thought being kind would make her feel part of the family. Instead, she saw it as weakness. From the very first day, she barked orders like a boss addressing staff. Margaret, bring me coffee. Margaret, fix this. Margaret, make something special for dinner. I obeyed, telling myself it was easier to keep the peace, that maybe she would change. But people like Tiffany never change. They only push harder when they realize you won't push back. That December morning, she burst into my kitchen in a red designer dress, perfume thick as syrup, and announced, "My whole family is coming for Christmas." Only 25 people. I felt the same dull dread I'd felt for years, knowing I'd end up cooking for days and cleaning for weeks. But something inside me had snapped. Maybe it was the way she said only. Maybe it was the quiet arrogance in her smile. Whatever it was, it gave me strength. I simply said, "Perfect," and told her I wouldn't be here. When I saw the shock in her eyes, I knew the balance of power had shifted. She sputtered, stammered, called for Kevin like a child calling for rescue. He arrived moments later, tired from work but already defensive. "Mom," he sighed, "don't you think you're being dramatic?" Dramatic. That word struck deep. For 5 years, I had cooked, scrubbed, and hosted without complaint, and now I was dramatic for saying no. I told him calmly that I was taking a vacation. Tiffany shrieked that I was ruining Christmas, that her family had bought tickets, that this was our house. That phrase, "our house," was all I needed to hear. It wasn't their house. It was mine. I had paid every mortgage payment, fixed every broken pipe, kept the roof over their heads. They were guests who had mistaken hospitality for ownership. Kevin tried to reason with me. He said Tiffany couldn't handle cooking for so many people, that she was busy with work. I nearly laughed. Her career was a part-time job at a boutique that Kevin's connections had gotten her. He begged me to delay my trip until after Christmas, promised to pay for a vacation later. But I had already made my decision and my plans. I told them I'd be leaving the next morning to visit my sister in Miami. That was a lie, of course, but it served its purpose. As Tiffany's panic grew, her mask began to slip. She screamed that I was selfish, accused me of emotional blackmail, and finally broke down, begging me to stay. I watched her desperation with quiet satisfaction. I'd spent 5 years bowing to her every whim. She could spend 5 minutes learning what consequences felt like. What neither of them knew was that this decision wasn't sudden. I had been planning it for months, ever since the day I discovered what Tiffany was really hiding. 3 months earlier, while cleaning Kevin's office, a room Tiffany had claimed as her workspace but rarely entered, I found a folder of financial papers. Tiffany's name appeared again and again, beside massive credit card balances and secret loans. Some accounts were in Kevin's name. Others used my address as collateral. My hands trembled as I flipped through pages of luxury store receipts and bank statements. Tens of thousands of dollars spent on clothes, jewelry, vacations. She had been borrowing money, using my house as security, and Kevin knew nothing about it. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, realizing the woman who called me family had been plotting to sell my home to cover her debts. The next morning, I called an old lawyer friend, Robert, and asked him how to protect my assets. I transferred my savings to a new bank account and began taking quiet, careful steps. I hired a private investigator who confirmed everything and uncovered more. Tiffany's so-called boutique job was a part-time position paying barely above minimum wage. Her success was a facade supported by lies and Kevin's salary. Even worse, she'd been telling her relatives that we were wealthy, that Kevin owned multiple businesses, and that I had a fortune waiting in inheritance. She'd promised her uncle Alejandro that I would help finance Kevin's expansion. She even told another relative that I'd left her half of my estate in my will. I was disgusted, but also oddly calm. For the first time, I had power. When she invited her family for Christmas, I saw my opportunity. They would all come expecting the lavish feast Tiffany had bragged about. Instead, they would find an empty kitchen and a nervous hostess with nothing to offer but excuses. And while they watched her crumble, they'd also discover the truth about her money, her lies, and her deceit, because I had already made sure of it. A week before she made the announcement, I had written polite emails to the key members of her family: Alejandro, her successful uncle in Miami, her brother-in-law Marco, a real estate agent, and her sister Valeria, who worked in finance. I told them I was worried about Tiffany and Kevin's delicate financial situation and wanted advice. Then, by mistake, I attached copies of the bank statements I had found. The responses came fast and furious. Alejandro was furious. Marco canceled any talk of business deals. Valeria said she was flying in to confront her sister personally. The beauty of it was that none of them told Tiffany. They planned to discuss everything in person at Christmas. Now, as I stood in my kitchen that December evening, listening to Tiffany and Kevin argue in the living room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I packed my suitcase quietly, double-checked my plans, and prepared for my own little Christmas miracle. The morning of my departure felt lighter than any holiday morning I'd had in years. I woke at 6:00 a.m., humming as I packed the last of my clothes. I left a note on the kitchen table. Decided to leave early for my trip. The house is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Margaret. Simple. Polite, devastating. What I didn't mention was that I had emptied the pantry and refrigerator the night before, locked away my good china and Christmas decorations, and canceled the cleaning service that Tiffany liked to brag about hiring. If she wanted the perfect Christmas for Instagram, she'd have to make it happen herself. At 7:00 a.m., my taxi arrived. As we drove away, I glanced back at the house that had been both my home and my cage. The guilt I expected never came, just relief. My real destination wasn't Miami. I had booked a suite at a luxury hotel an hour away with an ocean view and 24-hour room service. I planned to spend the next 2 weeks resting, reading, and watching Tiffany's empire collapse from a distance. By 10:30 a.m., the first call came. Kevin's name lit up my phone. I let it ring, smiling as I imagined him discovering the bare cupboards and Tiffany realizing that no one was coming to save her. A few minutes later, another call, then another. Finally, I answered. "Mom, where are you?" "We found your note." "Why did you leave early?" he asked, his voice tight with confusion. "Because it's time you both learned to handle things yourselves," I said calmly. "You've got a big Christmas to prepare for." "But Mom, Tiffany's, well, she's upset," he stammered. "She doesn't know what to do. She'll manage." "She's very capable," I replied sweetly, and hung up. By mid-afternoon, I had 17 missed calls from Kevin, 31 from Tiffany, and a flood of frantic texts. At noon, a message from Alejandro appeared. "Mrs. Margaret, my family, and I have decided to arrive a day early tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. We'd like to speak with Tiffany about some important matters." Perfect. The timing couldn't have been better. I replied, "Of course. I'll be leaving for my trip that morning, but Tiffany and Kevin will be delighted to host you." His answer came seconds later. "Excellent. That will be exactly what we need." The next morning, December 23rd, dawned clear and bright. I ordered eggs, Benedict, and coffee, enjoying breakfast on my terrace while imagining the chaos at home. By 7:00 a.m., my phone was buzzing again. Kevin's voicemail came first. "Mom, please pick up." Tiffany's hysterical. "The grocery stores don't open until 8:00 a.m., and her family will be here any minute. We need help." Then Tiffany's voice, high and trembling. "Margaret, please. Everything's empty. There's no food, no plates, nothing. I can't do this alone. They're going to think I'm a liar." I sip my coffee and listen to the next message, Tiffany sobbing now. "Your decorations, your tablecloths, your recipes. Where is everything? Please just tell me where you put it." I almost felt pity. Almost. But pity is what had kept me trapped for years. They needed to experience consequences without a safety net. At 8:20 a.m., Kevin called again, sounding near tears. "Mom, Tiffany's family is here. Uncle Alejandro, Aunt Valeria, everyone. They're asking for you. Please talk to them. We don't know what to say." I told him, "Tell them the truth, that for 5 years you've taken me for granted, that I finally decided I deserve a vacation." There was silence, then muffled voices, Alejandro's deep, firm tone demanding answers. "At least tell us what you used to serve." Kevin pleaded, "We have no idea what to make. That's because I spent weeks planning every holiday," I said. "It wasn't magic, Kevin. It was work. Work you never saw." He hesitated, his voice breaking. "Mom, please. They're all here." Tiffany's locked herself in the bathroom crying. "Uncle Alejandro wants to speak with you." I smiled. "I'd love to talk, but I'm on vacation. Tell him Tiffany can explain everything. After all, she's the one who planned this gathering." Then I turned off my phone. An hour later, while I was enjoying a massage at the spa, my hotel room phone rang. The front desk said a man named Alejandro wanted to speak with me. "Put him through," I said. His voice was polite but sharp. "Mrs. Margaret, I need to ask some questions. Is it true Tiffany expected you to cook and clean for all her events?" "Yes," I said plainly, "for 5 years. And the financial statements you sent us, are they real?" "Every one of them. She's been hiding credit card debt and loans using my house as collateral." There was silence followed by a heavy sigh. "She's been lying to us for years," he said finally. "She told us you were wealthy, that Kevin had a thriving business, that she managed everything. She even asked us for financial help, claiming it was to expand the business. We believed her." "You're not the first," I said softly. "But perhaps now you'll be the last." Alejandro's voice hardened. "My family doesn't tolerate deceit. Tiffany has a lot to answer for. And let me assure you, there will be no financial support for Kevin's business now that we know the truth." I thanked him and suggested gently, "Let her face the consequences herself. She's always had someone cleaning up her messes. Maybe it's time she learns what happens when no one does." "You're absolutely right," he said. "This Christmas will be an education for her." When I hung up, I felt an almost physical weight lift from my chest. I had spent 5 years feeling powerless, and now, simply by walking away, I had taken control. Later that afternoon, I asked a car service to drive me past my house. From the car window, I could see half a dozen vehicles parked crookedly on the driveway, grocery bags scattered across the porch. Tiffany stood in the doorway, pale and frantic, gesturing wildly while Kevin tried to calm her down. Inside, Alejandro's stern figure loomed over them like judgment itself. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and smiled. The next day, Christmas Eve, I would return not as their servant, but as the woman reclaiming her home, her dignity, and her peace. Christmas Eve morning was crisp and quiet when I returned home. The taxi dropped me off at 10:00 a.m. I stood outside my own house for a moment, breathing in the cold air, feeling a calm confidence I hadn't known in years. When I unlocked the door, silence greeted me, an uneasy, heavy silence. Then a voice broke it. "Mom." Kevin appeared in the hallway, his face, pale eyes ringed with exhaustion. Behind him stood Tiffany, unrecognizable from her usual perfection. Her hair was messy, her makeup gone, her red eyes swollen from crying. Following them into the living room came Tiffany's family, Alejandro stern and motionless, Valeria clutching a folder, Marco and Evelyn, their expressions carved from disappointment. Mrs. Margaret, Alejandro said formally, extending his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you. We're deeply sorry for everything that's happened." "The honor is mine," I replied calmly. "And don't apologize. Sometimes the truth needs a little chaos to come to light." At that moment, the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. Robert, my lawyer, stepped in carrying a briefcase. His presence changed the air instantly. "Good morning," he said, addressing everyone with professional composure. "I'm Robert Miller, Mrs. Margaret's attorney. She's asked me to be present for some legal clarifications." Tiffany's face drained of color. "Why is there a lawyer here?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Because after 5 years of manipulation and disrespect," I said, "I'm done letting other people control my life." Kevin's brow furrowed. "Mom, what's going on?" Robert opened his briefcase and began laying out papers. "Mrs. Margaret has made several legal changes to protect her property and finances. First, this house is now placed in a family trust. It cannot be sold or mortgaged without her explicit written consent, even after her death." Tiffany gasped. "You can't do that!" "I already did," I said softly. "You thought this was our house. Remember? It isn't. It never was," Robert continued. "Second, Tiffany no longer has unrestricted access to this property. All visits must be approved by Mrs. Margaret in advance." Kevin blinked clearly, struggling to keep up. "Wait, what does that mean?" "She can't come over." "It means," I said firmly, "that your wife will no longer walk into my kitchen, give orders, or treat me like hired help. She will knock. And if she's lucky, I'll answer." Alejandro's expression tightened. He stepped forward, his voice deep with restrained anger. "Tiffany, is it true what Mrs. Margaret told us? That you've been lying about your finances and using family names for loans?" Tiffany stammered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help Kevin. I thought if I could impress everyone, maybe what Alejandro interrupted. Maybe you could use your mother-in-law's name as collateral. Borrow money under false pretenses." "That's fraud, Tiffany." The room went silent. Kevin looked at her, his face a mixture of confusion and horror. "Tell me this isn't true," he whispered. Tiffany broke down completely. "Kevin, I just wanted us to have a good life. I wanted my family to respect us. You know how hard it is for me." "It's hard for you," Kevin said bitterly. "My mother paid for everything, cooked for everyone, and you treated her like a servant. And now I find out you've been lying to me for years." I felt both pain and vindication watching my son finally see what I had seen all along. He turned to me, eyes filled with shame. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "I don't need sorry," I said gently. "I just need respect. That's all I ever asked for." Robert cleared his throat. "There's more. Tiffany will be required to repay the money borrowed through deception and issue formal apologies to those she misled. Failure to do so could result in legal consequences." Tiffany's sobs filled the silence. Alejandro shook his head. "Our family won't tolerate this kind of dishonesty. You've embarrassed us all." Valeria stepped forward and handed Tiffany the folder she had been holding. "These are copies of every debt you've accumulated. It's time you learn exactly what living beyond your means costs." Tiffany looked at the papers, her hands trembling. "I can't pay this back." "You'll find a way," I said. "Because for once, no one else is going to fix your mistakes." Kevin ran a hand through his hair, his voice low. "Mom, I didn't know about any of this. I thought things were fine." You didn't want to know, I said, my tone soft but firm. You let comfort blind you. You let her convince you that my kindness was servitude. But it ends today. Robert began packing his documents. Everything has been notarized, he said. Mrs. Margaret, all you need now is your signature on the final page. I signed without hesitation. The sound of the pen scratching across the paper felt like freedom itself. I looked around the room at Tiffany crumbling under the weight of her lies at Kevin, struggling between love and realization at her relatives who had finally seen the truth. This house was built on sacrifice, I said, but I won't let it become a monument to deceit. For 5 years, I thought keeping quiet kept peace. I was wrong. Silence only feeds disrespect. The clock struck noon. Those who wish to stay for a real Christmas, one built on honesty and gratitude, are welcome, I said. Those who prefer fantasies may leave. Alejandro nodded solemnly. I think we'll stay. Perhaps it's time this family learned what real values look like. Tiffany looked up at me through tears. Margaret, please. I didn't mean to hurt you. I met her gaze. You didn't just hurt me, Tiffany. You underestimated me. And that's a mistake you'll never make again. As the family settled into a heavy silence, I walked to the window. Outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft, steady, and cleansing. It felt symbolic, as if the house itself were being washed clean of years of resentment. Christmas that year wasn't filled with decorations or feasts, but with something far more powerful: truth. That Christmas Eve afternoon stretched into one of the most extraordinary days of my life. For the first time in years, my house didn't echo with Tiffany's demands or Kevin's excuses. It was filled with quiet conversations, long silences, and the kind of reflection that only happens when illusions shatter. Tiffany sat at the far end of the living room, head bowed, while her relatives gathered near the fireplace, speaking in hushed tones. Kevin lingered by the kitchen doorway, staring at the counter where I'd spent countless hours cooking for others, never for myself. Alejandro broke the silence first. Mrs. Margaret, he said gravely, I want to thank you. You could have exposed Tiffany cruelly or publicly, but instead you gave her the dignity of learning the truth from family. That's rare. I nodded, though my eyes were on Kevin. Sometimes I said the only way to save someone is to let them fall. I didn't destroy Tiffany's life, she did that herself. I just stepped aside and let the truth do its work. Kevin came closer, his voice unsteady. Mom, I don't know what to say. I thought I was protecting her. I thought keeping the peace was love. I smiled sadly. Love without respect isn't peace, Kevin. It's surrender. You can't build a family on silence and fear of confrontation. You have to choose courage, even when it costs comfort. He nodded slowly, the realization sinking in. Then he surprised me by kneeling beside my chair. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. For letting her treat you that way. For not seeing what was right in front of me. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You see it now. That's what matters. Across the room, Tiffany wiped her face and whispered, I'll pay everyone back. I don't know how, but I will. Alejandro looked at her, his tone softer now. We'll hold you to that, Tiffany. But more than money, you owe your family honesty. When evening fell, the tension began to lift. Valeria helped me prepare a modest dinner. Nothing extravagant, just roasted chicken vegetables and a small pie from the freezer. For once, the table wasn't a stage for Tiffany's performance, but a place of reconciliation. As we ate, conversation turned from accusation to reflection. Alejandro shared stories from his youth. Marco cracked jokes to lighten the mood, and even Tiffany managed a faint smile. After dinner, I stood by the window watching snowflakes settle on the garden. Kevin joined me quietly. You know, he said, for years I thought you needed us. But I think it's the other way around. I chuckled softly. We all need someone, Kevin. The trick is learning who deserves that place in your life. He hesitated, then asked, "Are you ever going to forgive Tiffany?" "I already have," I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means closing the door on the pain and opening one for growth on your terms, not theirs. Tiffany approached timidly, holding a folded paper. "I wrote this," she said, her voice trembling. "It's a written apology to you, to Kevin, to my family. I'll sign it and give copies to everyone tomorrow morning." I took the paper, read the opening lines, and nodded. "Good," I said simply. "That's a start." Later, after everyone went to bed, I sat in the quiet glow of the Christmas lights. The house felt lighter somehow, as if decades of resentment had been scrubbed away. I thought about the years I'd spent mistaking obedience for love service, for belonging. In trying to keep my family together, I had erased myself. But that night, surrounded by the faint sound of breathing upstairs and the whisper of falling snow, I felt whole again. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke early. The house was still. I brewed coffee not because someone demanded it, but because I wanted to. I stood at the counter, inhaling its warmth, and smiled at the small miracle of peace. When the others came downstairs, we exchanged simple gifts, handwritten letters, hugs, promises to do better. No luxury, no spectacle, just sincerity. Alejandro left later that morning, shaking my hand firmly. "You've reminded us what family should mean," he said. "Respect, honesty, accountability. You've given Tiffany a chance to change. Whether she takes it or not is up to her." After everyone departed, Kevin lingered at the door. "Mom," he said softly, "do you think we can fix this?" Maybe I answered. But fixing it doesn't mean going back to how things were. It means building something new, something based on truth. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and left. When the door closed behind him, I turned to face the quiet sunlit house. House, my sanctuary again. I spent the rest of Christmas afternoon sitting by the window, watching children play in the snow outside, their laughter drifting faintly through the glass. I thought about how easily we let people take pieces of us, our time, our kindness, our worth, until there's nothing left. But sometimes, reclaiming yourself doesn't require revenge or confrontation. It just takes the courage to walk away and the wisdom to stay gone until others learn what your presence truly meant. That Christmas, I learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you close to protect peace. And sometimes closing a door is the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others. If you were me, would you have walked away or stayed to fight? Tell me in the comments below. And if you believe every person deserves to reclaim their peace, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one.